Richards trying to scoot in there alone. It pinballs to the crease.
Let's get it.
Oh my God! Here we go.
You're listening to the Pod Street Bullies podcast with your hosts, Derek.
How you gonna get it, brother?
John. Matt Casey.
Unnecessary, but totally necessary.
And Cody.
What's not to love?
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the Pod Street Bullies. My name is Derek.
And I'm John. What's going on, everybody?
Excuse my lack of enthusiasm there, but we're also joined by the Mats. What's happening, fellas?
Just out. You got to say it at the same time. You got to go, hello.
Hello.
We're going to harmonize here tonight.
All right, Derek's off his game a little bit.
I am. We're talking
Hoagie
stuff
is
that...
showing up my outfit from last week. I'm pretty.
Hey.
I'm
the only one that followed the memo.
But like, what's the scenario where you're like, you know what I need is a t-shirt tuxedo? Like, how does that come about?
That was one of your boys' weddings. Didn't you wear that?
No, it's Carhartt.
No, well, yeah, that too. It was Dave's from 5 Minute Major's wedding when they did the outdoor wedding, and we all did
Wedding
t-shirt
part
tuxedos, which I wasn't even a part of, but they just held a t-shirt for me for a year and a half.
That's how you know you got real friends, man.
Well,
Exactly.
as long as you're not wearing cargo shorts with those, I think you should be good, right?
Definitely
You know, I
not.
read this interesting article about cargo shorts coming back, so I was just before the trend started.
Now you're at that
Hey,
weird
listen,
in-between stage.
more people
Like,
wear cargo shorts than people who put keys in their back pocket. So at least I got that going for me.
I'd like to see the numbers on that. That's up for debate.
John's-
That'll be
I
next
mean,
week.
I guess
That guy,
you're
huh?
true. Like, the more I think about it, there might be a bunch of back pocket key kind of people.
Yeah,
But
like I
that's
said,
as far as we should dive into that. before
I
get our
reserve
hands on it.
judgment until I see the numbers. But anyways, and in terms of this, I'll somewhat reserve judgment until actual facts come out. We're going to get into the Ivan Fedotov talk here. It's the big thing really that's happening this week that's really taken off, for lack of a better term. There's been reports, and I'll mention this somewhat as a disclaimer because we know, I'm sure a lot of people can infer as well, that, you know, the reports that came out, always want to take them with a bit of grain of salt because who knows. But what we do know apparently that has been somewhat confirmed is that he is now at a military base, so to say, up in essentially the Arctic Circle, middle of nowhere.
Northern Russia.
Northern Russia. It's an island off of like the northern tip of Russia. He's probably freezing his balls off right now. But the way it all occurred just kind of, I mean, let's be honest, it shocked everybody. I mean, just initial reaction, right? Everybody just completely shocked.
Yeah. Like, what is happening right now?
Yeah.
It felt like something out of a movie. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
what was that show about the spies from like the 1980s? It was like the KGB spies.
Yeah, I know what you're talking
Oh,
about.
the
Yeah.
American.
The
Yes.
Americans.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I just felt like somebody was typing up a scene from one of those episodes. Crazy to me.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm sorry, everybody else, general reaction here before we really kind of dive into it.
Yeah, I think it's shocking. It's a little bit concerning because I think we all know that we're probably only getting part of the story and we don't know which part. But like on the surface, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for Russia. It doesn't look good for hockey. It doesn't look good for future Russian players. Like it just like
Right.
it's not a good look. Is you know, and I feel for Fedotov. He clearly wasn't into it. So you know. It's not a good scenario one way or the other there.
Yeah. What are your initial thoughts when everything unfolded here, Hoagie?
Dude, just insanity. I didn't know what to believe. I thought, like John said, It seemed like it was something out of a movie. I feel for him. It sucks. I wish there was something we could do for him, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. We'll get into that later after the podcast. But
yeah,
kind of how it all unfolded, at least according to reports, and I'll talk about like a couple people that were reporting on it. There was one individual in particular, Carl Manson, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, who, if everything checks out, everything's accurate, fantastic job keeping up with it, props where they're due. But he was coming out, Fedotov was coming out of a training session or practice or something like that, and he was detained by Russian officers. They took him away to a commissariat, and he
essentially for draft dodging. Sorry, Derek.
Yeah. No, you're right. Thank you for adding that. This is draft dodging, essentially. In American terms, every Russian has a 12-month military duty, and they were accusing him of dodging it. So took him to the commissariat, got his injections, which typical of any military occupation, to what I'm aware of, at least. They said that he fell ill. And then they took him to a hospital. Everything was very hush-hush. And then all of a sudden, they're taking him all the way up to the northern ends of Russia. And he's going to serve 12 months there. So what that essentially means for the Flyers is, no, he's not coming to North America. No, he's not going to be the backup to Carter Hart nor the starter in Lehigh Valley. And beyond that, who knows? Everything very murky. Again, nothing really solid there aside from the fact that we know he's not coming over to North America. We could get into the politics of it, but there's no point. It is what it is at this point. And it's just, general reaction for me, again, without getting too crazy here, this is just insane to me. I have no other words really to describe it.
Well, and I think too, Derek, and I've said this already a few times. I mean, if we were to dive into this situation, we'd be a different kind of podcast. I mean, we would be international government, and But I think that one thing that I think everybody should take away from this, outside of hockey, is this kind of opens your eyes to what other parts of the world are like. This is a situation that I don't think we could fathom in this country, and I'm not saying that we do it better. I'm just saying it's a different way of handling things. And I think it's an opportunity to kind of open your eyes and go, whoa, okay. So
now, one thing I did find interesting, and you guys can chime in here, obviously, but I'd read a tweet from Bill Meltzer a couple days ago explaining, I guess, the contract situation and looking a little bit further into it myself. He played for CSKA, which is a military hockey team.
Military's hockey team, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So everybody there is considered military personnel. So again, this could be considered draft dodging your duty to the military. But he was also not under contract with CSKA at the time of his detainment because it expired at the end of the year. Where I guess, there's should be a fine line between that, but where what's essentially what? I don't know where to go with this.
I really feel like we can't go with it without getting into waters that we're just not
sure.
I think the reality is that the four of us probably couldn't find Wyoming on a map. So we probably shouldn't
for yourself
go too far. I'll say this, and again, I don't think this is speaking out of line, but you look at, there was a great documentary from a few years ago. I think it was a 30 for 30 or somewhere around there, called "Of Miracles in Men," and it was basically the miracle on ice through the lens of Team Russia, but then it really started following Slava Fetisov and him being essentially the first Russian to break out of the iron block, to break out into U.S. and NHL hockey. And then, what they kind of alluded to then, and, he was then put in charge, as of 10 years ago, I think he was put in charge of the Russian Hockey Association and the Olympics and things like that. I don't think he's still doing it, but I look at somebody like that and everything that he went through and what's he thinking of all this? I'd be really curious of figuring out what does he think of it? What does what do some of the other Russian players who may be affected, like, are they freaked out? Like, I would be. Even if you're not under military contract, like, I don't want any of our guys going back to Russia because who the hell knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, think about it. Guys like Provorov, and if he would go back to Russia, like, what would happen? I mean, is he coming back? Ovechkin, I mean, Christ, one of the best players in the league. Think about that. Are they going to let him go? Or come back, I should say, to the States? But it's all just, I mean, and again, a lot of it is going to be hearsay. A lot of it is going to be, oh, well, this could be it. Like, we're hearing this, that, yada, yada, yada. Like, it all just seems so strange to me because John alluded to it. This is a country that has a different set of rules and they play by a different game than we do here. And it's just, it for lack of a better term and without getting too dramatic, it does somewhat astound me that that's how things operate.
Well, and I think too, I'm sorry, Casey.
Go ahead.
I think that the fact that you're not hearing fellow countrymen or even the NHL bring this up, like mention it at all, I think does say something. And I don't think I don't want people to get that wrong. I don't think it says something about anybody's personal character or, or the balls that they have or anything like that. It just says that this is a very deep situation that has a lot of just nasty edges to it.
A lot of those people have friends, family members that still live in Russia. Like that, I think that's the one thing that might have, aside from the thing, like the occurrence itself, I think that's what bothered me most is that people are like, why can't Ovechkin speak out? Why can't this guy, that guy? And it's like, what? Are you kidding me?
You just don't know what.
Take everything into account. Like, those people have family that live there. I'm sorry, but if
it
I'm
wasn't
in his
too long
position,
ago, the Panarin thing happened. I mean,
right.
I mean,
I think
that stuff happens.
There's a harsh reality, and I hope it's not the case, but it's a harsh reality that we might just never see this guy in a Flyers uniform. Because even if he comes back, like, can we safely say he's not going to be training as a hockey player for the next year? Probably. Like, is this
there
his
are
window?
facilities up that way? Like, they're saying that he can still train.
It'll be cold enough just to,
Yeah, but if there's the promise of him coming to North America, they'll probably tell him, no, you can't train because they're spiteful and they don't want it to happen.
Right.
Whatever.
But, like, there's, at this point, I'm not counting on a year from now being like, okay, we got Fedotov back in the pipeline here. The only benefit of this and that I see is, hey, we no longer have a second goalie controversy that we have to worry about or talk about this offseason. Like,
and then I think if you want to just talk about the hockey for a second too, I mean, I think you really need to remove Fedotov from the picture. I agree with you, Casey, that even next year, like, I would personally be surprised if all of a sudden he decides to come back to come to North America after this ordeal. Selfishly, I think that part of this motivation had something to do with that.
Well, think about how often we talked about it before when, like, he was putting up those fantastic numbers in the KHL. I said it, John, I think you said it too. None of us anticipated Fedotov to come over. We were like, no, he's got it made. This was a Russian kid's dream, being one of the best players in the league that he, plays in over in his homeland. And, like, now that he's not coming over, you hate to say it, it's like, okay, maybe it really is a distinct possibility that he won't ever see ice in North America.
Isn't he Finnish? Did I make this up? I thought he was, like, originally from Finland.
I don't know.
Fedotov doesn't sound very Finnish to me.
Yeah,
I could be wrong. I'm not a man of culture. I don't know what to tell you there.
I mean, if he's playing for the Russian Olympic team, I would think that he's Russian. But you're right. So it does says, I just looked at his Elite Prospects page. It does say he was born in, I don't know, somewhere in Finland.
Chalk one up for Casey. All right.
La Pineranta, Fin.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I vacation there in the summer.
All right. Should we jump to something else?
Yeah, I mean, there's no point in really digging our heels into this because, again, it's all hearsay. We're not trying to spread any type of rumors, disinformation, anything like that. But
it's Flyers.
But it's Flyers hockey
news.
It's a little. Can we just angle it this way though? That, like, this is no fault of the Flyers, yet it's in a new and amazing way to find astonishingly shitty luck.
Right. Why couldn't this happen to the Blue Jackets?
Right. Between Farabee's injury, between our Russian backup now getting detained. I mean, it's one thing after the other, and I hate to be like the poor us kind of thing, but it's just piled up to a point of just unbelievable.
Right. What's next?
So
yeah.
So are you part of the crowd that's like we're cursed? That like this summer is cursed, this off season's cursed. Like nothing good is ever going to happen.
I don't know. I like to get my quotes from Billy Zane and Titanic. A real man mans its own luck.
None of this would have happened if we wouldn't have taken down the Kate Smith statue. That's all I'm saying. Everything was fine before he did. I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Here we
Kate
go.
Smith statue has nothing to do with this.
As soon as Gritty came on board, all hell.
Sam, are you watching?
Thanks a lot, Dave Scott.
Dave Scott is ruining Philadelphia hockey. Anyways, we'll get to something else. Another big, I should say, rumors. Because what else is there to talk about right now?
'Tis the season too.
Exactly.
Right.
Alex DeBrincat, a guy who has 1 year left on an expiring RFA deal, one of the premier scoring wingers in the league, is available, according to Chicago at least. And it looks
According
like
to his Tinder.
That too. I haven't looked, but I'll take your word for it. There's 1 more year left on that deal. The guy's going to command a ton of money when he hits the free market, but the Flyers have apparently put in an offer, and everything else coming out of this, essentially what I'm taking from is Philadelphia doesn't want to offer up the 5th overall pick. Okay, whatever. But everything else isn't going to get it done here. John, in your eyes, where do you stand on the trading for DeBrincat seesaw, if you will?
Well, if the Flyers are serious about it, they have to put the 5th overall pick. I mean, if I'm Chicago, if they're not going to offer that pick, I'm like, all right, I'm hanging up the phone. But I do think on the surface, bringing in a scoring winger, scoring anything that can put up 40 goals, you're like, yeah, sure, 5th overall pick, Bobby Brink, Ronnie Attard, whatever you want, take it, because that's what we've desperately needed. We're just not there. Like, if you really think about what all of this would entail, so the Flyers would have to get rid of a buttload, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of future for a winger, right? Uh-huh. Who's got 1 more year on his deal. And
as an RFA.
As an RFA, but isn't it then, I think his tendering offer or whatever they call that is like $9 million or something crazy. But anyway,
sure. Then
you have to sign an extension, assuming that he wants to stay with the Flyers, which, like, at this point, who knows, right? Yeah. And I'm really against paying a winger the kind of money that he's going to command. I just think that, like, you build through your centers, your D. Like, I don't know. My personal opinion is you can find decent enough wingers for far less money, where it just is not a move that makes sense to me. If we were 1 piece away and we had the money and it was like, let's just go for it, okay. But we're not 1 piece away. It's not the time.
Does anyone agree with John here?
I do. That's literally what I wrote down was if this was the only move we had to make this season, okay, yeah, let's give up what we can because this is the one that's going to put us over. We're several moves away from being even a playoff contending team, and this is going to hinder us. And I think the biggest detractor, if this guy had 3 years left, I'd be like, okay, I'd be much more gung-ho into it. But with 1 year left, I don't, the only benefit is we'll officially have JVR's contract off the books next year, so like money will free up, but like that's a lot of money, man. That's a ton of money.
He's going to make north. He's 10 million or more,
right? I don't know. I don't think it's the right time for it. I'm not necessarily a gun shy individual, at least with my with my perspective of what the Flyers should do this year. But putting all the money into one player or all the assets into one player, I don't think is the right move right now.
Where do you stand on this, Ogie?
Pull the freaking trigger. Let's just make it interesting.
That was the most unenthusiastic pull the trigger.
Sorry. No, I mean, listen, I understand the cards aren't there, but if you're trading for DeBrincat, you have to have the conversation before the trade is made that if we get you, we're signing you. Like, the trade's completed, we're signing right after that. That's the only way that makes sense in my head.
Can he be extended? Yeah. Is it
after?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
As soon as the trade's completed, you can sign.
Right.
Yeah. So I might have to split here in a second because the kid won't go to sleep without me. But I just want to make this point abundantly clear. I am all for any move that is going to make this team better, and getting Alex DeBrincat is going to make this team better. I understand the logistics. I understand that there is going to need to be money freed up in order to keep him. But if you can sell him on the fact that, again, as a 24-year-old 40-goal scorer, that you can build around him with a decent enough core, I think that's the right move to make.
Okay.
So, I mean, honestly, I don't see yes, okay, I do see there are setbacks to this. Sure, you could lose him, and you're not going to be able to recoup what you paid for him, essentially. But Paul in the Flyers High and Wide chat actually brought up a good point. You tender him, and if a GM is ballsy enough to offer sheet him at $9 million, you get multiple first-round picks.
4 draft pick, first-round
exactly.
picks, yeah.
So is it a giant risk? 100%. Is it a risk that me personally I would take? 100%.
Absolutely.
Put him on the first line with Couturier. I think those two, and then insert name here, could be a decent first line.
So, yeah,
okay.
Jesus, everybody else is on entry-level contracts, apparently.
Right.
But, like, I'm asking this question not because I know the answer, but, like, to me, all right, if you then give that kind of money to DeBrincat, you're saying we're building this team around you, right? Do we agree with that statement?
Yeah.
Aside from
sure.
Aside from Alexander Ovechkin, how many more successful teams have built their franchise around a winger? I'm curious who comes to mind? Because to me, this trade seems like one of the ones when we look back at like the late Holmgren years and go, well, that really screwed us up. Like it got us excited for a minute. We got Brizgal off. This worked out. Yeah. This is going to work out great. You know, it has the makings of that. We're not ready, and it's trying to make it like we are. Then we completely gut, some of our future. And you give this guy a bunch of money. I'm sorry, but he's not going to be able to put the team on his back.
No, and I don't think that we should expect that of him.
You pay a guy $10 to $11 million. To me, that's what that sounds like. You're putting the team on your back. I'm not going to
put the weight of the world on this kid's shoulders right away, because you've also got guys like Couturier who should be stepping up. If Provorov is still around, he should be stepping up too. But yes, there should be a substantial amount of weight on his shoulders, just not the entire weight of the franchise.
I guess I disagree there. To me, if I'm a GM and I'm going to give somebody that kind of money, it's like, I don't care what anybody else does. You are producing. I mean, like, this is your ship. You steer it.
Sure. I mean, look at we're paying JVR $7 million a year, right? And that's a ton of money. It's not what we're talking about at 10, 11, but like we're all like rip shit, even though he was the leading goal scorer. We're like, he is not producing. He isn't putting a team on his back at $7 million. Anything above that, you better be a game-changing player night in and night out. And maybe DeBrincat is. And like, I can't say I've watched enough Chicago Blackhawks in the last couple of years to really make that decision. But I don't know. It just seems like it doesn't. I think we can spend $8 to $10 million on a guy who does actually end up legitimately putting a franchise on his back. I don't think we should, but like, I just don't know if DeBrincat's the guy for that.
But we have a unique opportunity here in that you have a kid who's an RFA at the end of the season, a guy that realistically, if we wanted to, and if it was plausible, we could lock up for a long time through his prime years.
Right.
I mean, because we have his rights, we could sign him to an 8-year deal, taking him all the way up to the age 32 if we wanted to. Not saying we should, but that guy can be part of a nucleus of this team moving forward, because what did Chuck Fletcher say during his interview at the end of the season? We're looking at cores, or a core of 25 and younger. You know, that fits the mold to a T. And yes, I understand that, you know, it's just one guy. I understand that, you know, teams don't typically build around wingers, but like, you've got one team in the Flyers that has had a terrible streak lately of not being able to score goals. How do you fix that? You bring in a guy that can score goddamn goals
until he comes to the Flyers, and then he can't, and he gets hurt.
That's the medical stats problem.
Are you bringing up the fact that he doesn't have a Patrick Kane passing to him?
No,
like that.
No, I'm not. Lame. No, I'm not at all. I'm more of, if we were set in the more important positions.
We're not set anywhere though.
Oh, exactly.
Like,
and to me, I'm sorry, but the wing is the least important position to me.
Who's going to score the goals then?
I think.
Can you depend on bringing in a defenseman to pair with Provorov and score goals? Can you depend on bringing in a 3C? Like, can you bring in a 3C and depend on him to score goals? Like, no, you're going to get goals from your top two lines.
But Derek, the reality is, though, this guy could score 100 goals next year, and if he's the only one scoring them, we're still not going to do much better. Like,
okay, I get that, but it's got to start somewhere. It's got to start somewhere.
That's a fair point. It does, like, at some point we're going to have to do it. I just I don't know.
Rage against a guy Rage Against the Machine fan. Has to start somewhere. Has to start sometime.
All right. So to give a little bit more to it, then, what does a realistic package look like for DeBrincat? Like, convince me of something where it's like, okay, Chicago would bite on this, so I can give.
If I'm trying to sell Chicago on our fifth overall this year,
the
2024 Florida pick, I want to keep the 2023 pick. But I'm sure that Chicago is going to want to take aim at that, which fair.
Yep.
I'm okay parting with a guy like Bobby Brink.
Okay.
I'm okay, honestly, if the difference between keeping the 2023 and the 2024 first round pick is a guy like Forrester, take him.
So Brink and Forrester?
Potentially, sure. Like, I mean, is it a haul? Yes, but that's the price you pay.
I'm not convinced that they would say yes to that.
I'm not either. And I get that. I'm completely with you. But like, that's where you got to start. You haggle with them.
Sure. No, I know. But I want like the trade that gets him here.
The trade that gets him here?
Yeah. Like, okay, like, what does that look like?
They want an NHL ready player, correct?
Yep.
So
JVR.
Could you JVR.
I'd argue
this
that
is a
not.
question. This is a question for everybody here, because I'm curious to see what you would say. Is Morgan Frost that NHL ready player for a team like Chicago, who is not that good of a team this year?
Yes.
Out of everybody that we have, yes.
Okay. So
see, I'm asking Cam York.
See, given our situation on defense, I'm a bit hesitant to do that.
No, I wouldn't do it. I'd be hesitant to do it too. But if I'm Chicago,
can you up the pick or include an extra pick and include a guy like Zamula?
Nope.
No, he's not.
I think I would. Yeah, I'd give up Zamula in a heartbeat.
I'd give up Zamula in a heartbeat, sure. But I'm talking about Chicago.
Chicago wants someone flashy like a Cam York that has played and can do.
Sure. But again, like, I'm more reluctant to give up on a forward, not give up, but to give a forward than a defenseman, given our standing on the blue line right now.
Sure. I just think that it's a harder sell. Because even if you're saying that Morgan Frost is our proven NHLer, right? He ain't proved much.
No, he's had.
You know? I think that,
like, no, they said an NHL ready.
Yeah.
Right?
No, yeah, NHL ready.
NHL ready.
Which I think forward. Like, okay, that argument you could make.
Sure.
Does it mean I'm throwing in an extra third round pick? Maybe. Sure. Would I do it?
I don't care about a third round pick. Like,
I don't give a shit. No, I don't.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I think for what the Flyers have, you're looking at 2 first-round picks, a prospect like a Bobby Brink or a Tyson Forrester, and then, I mean, you want to. I mean, if we could sell them on Frost, be my guess. But I do think that they'll try to go a little bit more.
So what about 2 firsts in Konechny?
Nope.
No, they're rebuilding. I mean,
Decent.
yeah.
Young forward. Does come with a little bit of a hefty cap hit, but it's not like Chicago can't take that cap hit on. I mean, come on.
So would you do like 2 firsts, Konechny, and then like
Where are these
Brink?
first coming
Yes.
from, though? I mean, one's the 5th this year. Are you
They
talking
were all in
23?
2024. I'd rather 2024, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to get rid
Yeah.
of 2023, right?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
but
you
I
have the
think
chance to recoup a 2024 somewhere.
if I'm
else.
Chicago, I'm looking for the 2023 pick. I'm looking for someone, I'm not going to say dumb enough, but someone willing enough
Mhm.
that they want to DeBrincat so bad they'll give up their 2023 first round pick.
And we're just the idiots to do it.
This just has the making. This has the making of that Matt Duchene trade. Remember when Colorado, they ended up getting a first round pick from Ottawa, and Ottawa was terrible, and it ended up being like a 4th overall, 5th overall pick. Like
Yeah.
we have the
Dumb
makings of
bastards.
giving them all these first round picks, still sucking,
Yeah.
Just our luck,
but
right?
Chicago could reap the benefits.
Right.
I think right now it'd be really hard to convince me that this is the move to make because there's just way too many question marks for the rest of this team. And I don't think we're at a place where we can commit that kind of money to a DeBrincat, a Goudreau, anybody like that.
So if we're talking question marks, then let's say 4 or 5 spots we need to fill in the lineup. Who we fill them with what cap space we have, doesn't that just keep us in the same spot we're at? Because we can't afford game changers right now. We can't afford guys that are really honestly going to make us better.
Sure. So, but what's your realistic expectation for next season? Like,
Well, I
I'm
don't wanna
expecting
suck
a
like we did this
slightly
year, but I
better.
know we're not going to make the playoffs. Like I'm content. No, I don't want to say content. I realize that. I'm not
Right.
content with that.
You're
but,
complacent.
yeah, complacent. Like it's.
If this was
mediocrity.
if this was next season and there was more money coming off the books and it was like, okay, we've gone through the 2022-2023 season and then it's like, okay, now we've got DeBrincat. We had our 5th overall pick drafted. Like now let's go make a splash. Depending on how everything else looked, I'd be like, okay, right. This is year 2 under Tortorella. We've got some momentum here. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I just think there's too many there's too many question marks in positions to fill, but also in just like where our quote unquote veterans in leadership like stand. Like Couturier is a great player. Is he healthy? I don't know. Like Ellis can be a great player. Will he ever play again? I don't know.
How often is a guy like DeBrincat going to become available, though? That's my, I guess, sticking point here.
No, I get that.
Like that's where I sit because
I don't think you're ridiculous. I just don't think it's the time to do it.
I'll say this. I'll say this, and like playing devil's advocate a little bit, that like if we got DeBrincat for, you know, let's say 2 first rounders and a NHL ready guy, like whoever that may be, or a prospect, something like that, I'm not going to sit here and piss and moan about it. I'm not going to be like,
agreed.
no. I think, okay, let's look at the positives. All right, let's start building around this guy. What are the next pieces to come in? Like, who can we start shipping out? How do we get wingers that aren't 5'8" and below, on our roster? Because we seem to have plenty of those. So I mean, I don't see it as like, damn it, I don't want DeBrincat. I can't believe, like, he is the one flashy name out there. He's the first one through the door. I just think there's other ways that you can crap on Chuck as much as you want. He's earned it, but he did a pretty decent job last year in trying to revamp this team.
To address things, yeah.
It didn't work out, and a lot of that wasn't on him, but he made a lot of calls. He did a lot of deals that we didn't even think were possible, and he did it like pretty slyly. So I don't know. I just feel like the flashy name out there, that is very Holmgren-esque. Like that is what we did. You know, Andrew McDonald's out there, get him. And, you know,
Vinny LeCavalier.
Vinny LeCavalier, he's a cup winner. Get him.
Were we successful under Holmgren, though? Like, did we make the playoffs consistently? Did we ice a competitive team?
Right.
Were we where we are right now? Like,
no. But
Yeah.
we were also flying on the back of one of the best Phantoms teams that ever existed in the form of Carter and Richards and
True.
Drew. At one
Very
point,
true.
right?
Yeah, Drew. I mean,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Drew was a year or two afterwards,
Right.
but I mean, I think it was like the 06 team, like that we were when we were awful as the Flyers. That whole crew came up, and those are guys who hit their stride really well, and that's what you need. That's drafting well and helping them go through, and so that gave us a ton of leverage in the trade market, and then unfortunately, half of them got hooked on drugs and didn't work out.
I mean, and Holmgren at
Such
the
is
end,
life,
like the last few moves that he made, he was like Wild Bill Hickok. Like the guy just
Right.
freaking
He was just throwing haymakers in the corner, trying to get something to land.
All right, Hoagie, you've been like pent up here. I want to hear your
I've
take
really
on all
wanted to
this.
say. I've really wanted to say this. The name DeBrincat has us all salivating, just because of the name. He's a 24-year-old. He's a 40-goal scorer 2 times in a row, right? Something like that. We're all caught on the 2 words that Chuck and Dave Scott said at exit interviews: aggressive retool. And DeBrincat is the guy that you think, oh, that's the aggressive retool that we're all looking at. So I mean that's what really kind of like gets everybody excited, because like you don't see this type of player on the market ever really at this age.
Yeah.
What do you got, John?
I was gonna say, but
That-
these are also. I'm sorry, buddy. I can't help
No,
it.
you're good.
John's just gonna cut everybody off.
I
so
said
let's
what I
just-
had to say. That it's the type of player that we're all wanting.
This is also the kind of player where deals just don't end up like we'll talk about trade speculation, and then a trade doesn't end up happening because Chicago is going to want the moon. I mean, we saw with Jacob Chikrin, right, at the trade deadline. Everybody
There's
was
still
like,
talk about that though. I mean, to be fair,
sure, but it's like they're going to want a haul that no team is really going to realistically want. They're going to be like, well, you know what? If he ends up not wanting to be in Chicago in 2 years, like, we'll go get him then, because what you were asking for is crazy, and they have every right to ask for it. They don't have to trade him. I just think when this all comes down to it, I don't even think he's going to be on a different team next year. So, yeah, I think that I just think that their asking price is going to be way too high.
Yep, that's fair.
And no one's going to talk him down.
Unless New Jersey. I mean, New Jersey's probably the only team I could think of because they've openly said that they would trade the second
They
overall.
don't want that second overall. Yep.
Yeah.
That's why the 5th overall is appetizing for them, and that's why they want it.
Right.
If they're going to rebuild, they want that high pick.
Yep. Because they don't have one in this draft, in this first round.
Yeah.
Seth Jones, that really worked out well for them, huh?
Idiots.
Someone did say that, like, if they do a DeBrincat trade with the Flyers, somehow they see like a Seth Jones getting plugged in there somehow, some way to help bolster the defense. I'm like, dear God, no. Dear God, I don't want that.
How are we going to afford that? You're taking
right.
JVR at least.
You're taking JVR and Ellis. See you later.
Well, think about the value in expiring contracts here too, though. Like if Chicago's rebuilding, JVR is technically an expiring contract. So, I mean, there is some value to that.
Sure.
I'm not saying much, but it's there. So if you want to make the money work, JVR is your best chip.
I also think that, I mean, obviously, the sample size is pretty.
Seriously.
It's an expiring contract. That's the one thing that, honestly, that should be your sticking point when you're trying to sell on JVR. Expiring contract, off the books at the end of the year. And hell, if he plays well for you because you guys suck and JVR is not a terrible forward, you could trade him at the deadline, retain half of it for 1 year, and screw it, whatever.
Right.
I also think the sample size that we have
Casey,
for Chuck Fletcher is pretty small with this, but like he's not somebody who's going to get caught up in the sexy name. Like look last year with Seth Jones, right? I mean, that was the name. Everybody was like Flyers. The Flyers have the pieces. This just makes complete sense. And he went and got Ryan Ellis, which like at the time, the deal, I mean, it's still, I mean, he could never play again and it would still be an all right deal. But like, I don't think that this is a guy who's necessarily going to be like, all right, that's the name. We got to go get it. It's like, okay, that's where everybody else is biting. Who else can I go out and fish?
Who's the step below that we could, because then that sets the market, and then we can get like a little bit of a lesser version for a little bit less and still afford other things in there. I mean, it's just the overall pieces have to just end up working together. And again, I'm not saying if DeBrincat comes on, I'm not on board, but there's a lot to get done because so much didn't work out, with the exception of probably Cam Atkinson. And I would argue Ristolainen is still on the positive side, at least in my mind. But
earned a contract,
serves his purpose.
Yeah, everything else didn't really work out. Isn't it so sad though that didn't Phil Myers just get traded from
for Ryan
Tampa,
and they're not even going to buy him out?
Isn't it so bad that Ellis could literally play one more half season and we would still win that trade in a landslide? It wouldn't even be close. One half season, that's all we need to come out on top of that.
You know what I find, honestly, I find it impressive is the rationale in which people will, or I should say the lengths in which people will go to convince themselves trading for DeBrincat is a bad thing. Just surfing Twitter last night, Hoagie knows exactly what I'm going to say here. The people last night saying they'd rather have somebody like a Jesse Puljujarvi. And I should stop myself before I'm going to piss somebody off. But how do you convince yourself you'd rather have a guy that has never topped 40 points over a guy who can put up 40 goals,
score 40 points?
I mean,
what is the reasoning?
They don't even actually agree with that. They're just being morons.
That's my guess too. I'm glad you said it.
John knows best.
The lengths people will go to convince themselves that trading for Alex DeBrincat is a bad thing. It blows my mind, because I get it. There are negatives. There's negatives to every deal out there, but in my opinion, the positives far outweigh those negatives and what you're going to get in terms of his play. So it's not my job to figure out the cap situation. So let the bean counters take care of it. I don't care.
We don't do that very well either. We went over the cap.
Again, don't care. What's it going to do? Oh, no, we can't spend $250,000 next year. Oh, I mean, to us, holy shit, great. That's a ton of money. Right. To the Flyers, they're just
But one more thing before the show ends, we do have to talk a little bit about the draft. But so we get DeBrincat. What if Sean Couturier gets hurt again? Or what if if he's not healthy? It's Kevin Hayes and you know what I mean? We got this flashy winger, but what the hell is going to happen at center?
Farabee can play.
We don't have Morgan Frost in this scenario either.
Farabee's not playing until December.
Damn it.
Somebody calls Sam Morin. See what he's doing.
Scott Lawton, baby.
Lace him up, Big Sam.
Here's Scotty.
How do you like that center depth? Little Hayes, Lawton, Morin.
Oh,
1, 2, 3.
I almost dropped the F-bomb there. Just shoot me.
All right. Should we talk a little about the draft?
Selfishly for you, I'm sure.
Should John talk a little bit about the draft?
Well, I mean,
that's
I want
the better
to talk
question.
More about the draft after it happens, but I do think that it's interesting because when the Flyers went down to the 5th overall pick, as opposed to we were whoa, could this be the year we move up or whatever? I think everyone's figures, we can't even be 4th. I really think that the Flyers are in the best position they could be in, because it's they have the opportunity to see another team like an Arizona go and make one of those, what the F did you just do draft picks, and then somebody slides down. I mean, the amount that I've read about this draft class, right, is there aren't any, world beaters. There's no generational talent,
There's no DeBrincat. Yeah.
There's no DeBrincats, who was drafted in the second round. But that
we passed on twice.
Pascal LeBerge.
You've got a 2-horse race with Shane Wright and Slavkovsky, right? And then it's kind of who knows. I mean, most rankings, it's Logan Cooley as a center, American. I think he's going to Minnesota next year. Then there's two defensemen. It's
Jiricek and Nemec.
Right?
Yeah.
And then another guy that kind of gets thrown on there is Cutter Gauthier, who is
I like him.
Yeah, well, he really like shot up the rankings.
He is so fast.
The second half, and he's big, 6'3",
Yeah.
I think,
Oh
big
my
body.
Chuck Fletcher's dream.
Going to Boston College, and I know that he went
over there,
center.
guys?
I know he's having a dream or something.
What?
Right.
But I know he can play center or the wing, but I know that he's going to play center at Boston College. So big body center sounds like something that the Flyers could
Boston
use.
connection.
There you go.
Send Kevin Hayes.
So I think if you look at those names, right, that's 6 names that I think the Flyers would be happy with. Obviously, Wright and Slavkovsky, let's be real. But if Arizona goes and grabs a defenseman instead of Cooley, it's like, okay, maybe Cooley slides down. Like, I think that there's an opportunity to get a really good player, potentially. Obviously, we know how that works, Nolan Patrick.
Talk about the draft order real quick. Like, after the first 2 picks, you've got Montreal, Jersey, then you've got Arizona at 3, correct?
Yep, Arizona,
And then
Seattle.
Seattle's at 4. Okay.
Seattle and then us.
So really, when you think about it, all you need is either Arizona or Seattle, which likely, let's be honest, it's probably going to be Arizona, muffs their pick. And someone falls onto the Flyers' lap.
Right. Well, the best thing that could happen is actually Arizona takes Gauthier, because I read something about Arizona being all about like the big bodied guys.
Mm-hmm.
So if they went off the board a little bit and took Gauthier, then you've got the potential of Cooley, who is, I mean, if he slid to the Flyers, we won. We did it.
Mm-hmm.
Woohoo. But you have either Cooley or those 2 defensemen who I think realistically they look at more of like a top 4 than a top 2. You know, if everything were to pan out, maybe they could be a first pairing D, but I think you're looking more like second pairing guys, which why not?
Another Sanheim, yay.
But I just think that we see it over and over again where a team goes off the board early enough where it's like the Flyers really could, you know, get a good player here.
I find it really interesting that Cooley's name is being brought up a lot. Like Martinez was just tweeting about it tonight, Tuesday night, about how there is a very real possibility that he slides to the Flyers.
I mean, I'd be shocked, to be honest with you.
I would too. I mean, I think a lot of us would be that, you know, vaguely follow. Like I'm not John. I don't follow the draft as religiously as he does, but I'm invested, you know, because we cover the team. I enjoy talking about prospects too. Not nearly as knowledgeable. I'm done pumping John's tires, but you know, it's one of the
boost.
Yeah. Okay. Have fun fitting through the door.
Typically don't need other people to give it to me either.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah.
But like, it's always fun because, you know, when we have a pick that high with any team in any year, like it's intriguing. Like these guys are made or should be, you know, I don't want to necessarily say game changers, but like they should be quality players moving forward for a team that desperately needs them. So the top center, or I'm sorry, not the top center in the draft, one of the top centers in the draft in Logan Cooley. The prospect of him coming to the Flyers really intrigues me.
Right.
And if it's not him, and, you know, let's say Arizona and Seattle just both decide to go D, I don't know. Like Gauthier, I think, is a solid consolation prize. I think they could use someone that fast and dynamic. You know, just from what I've read, just from what I've seen, like it'd be an intriguing pick if nothing else.
Well, and one of the things I want to pass to the Mats, because I know that you don't necessarily follow this as much, is like if we're saying level playing field, you know, like the same possibility of them being solid NHL contributors, would you prefer the Flyers take a center or a defenseman?
I go defenseman. I just think they're really good defensemen, and especially, I don't know if any of these guys are right-handed or not, but if you get a right-handed defenseman in the draft that you think is a stud, like you take that any day, because those guys are few and far between. I wouldn't be opposed to a center, but like I always err on the side that getting great defensemen is a tough needle to thread.
I'm looking right now. I know Nemec is a right-handed defenseman, and the other one is also a right-handed defenseman. So the two that are in that area are both right-handed defensemen.
So even if they're second pairing guys, like that's
both 6'3" too.
Yep,
I love it.
6'3", 190 for your check.
How about you, Hoagie?
That's a string bean, by the way. If you're 6'3", 190, you got some
190. Yeah, 190. I thought I saw 193. It's 190. Not the
Hoagie, what do you say, buddy?
I get Casey's point, and like the right-handed defenseman, groom them as you will. But I mean, are any of these guys like going to jump right into the NHL?
No.
Do we know?
No. I mean, there's a chance that Shane Wright, even if he gets picked first overall, might not even be in the NHL next year.
Then,
this isn't a very potent draft class. Like there's talent, but it's not very
right.
It's not jumping right away. No, then that makes my decision right there. I mean, let's take the right-handed defenseman and let's groom him. Let's do what we can to make him a good defenseman. If there was someone that's jumping right into the NHL, I'd say take the centerman right away and put him on that. That's your 3C right there, and just and play him like that.
Nemec is only 6'1".
Oh, is he? I thought I must have clicked on the same link twice.
I'm looking at Elite Prospects. It's got him listed at 6'1", 192, which I mean
that's more filled out. You know,
it is.
That's still like a foot taller than I am. So
right. you know, one of the things
that's how tall I am. I mean, Christ.
One of the things too is, and this is a complete bias on my part, is I prefer, if I'm going to commit that high of a pick, I'd prefer my player to already be in North America. And both of those players are in Europe. And not Russia. That's a whole different conversation about those poor Russian kids who are now going into this draft and now have to deal with that. But it's just this idea of like, they're already on this ice. We see how they're performing here. They're relatively close already. You know, the idea of staying and playing in Europe is not even on their mind. Like, so that's one of the things too, where it's like, if all 3, 4, 5 of these guys are on equal playing fields, it's one of those things that I'm considering, right? Especially after the Fedotov news.
Do you feel? I mean, I definitely sensed a trend just in terms of like the college ranks. More and more players going through college instead of either the Canadian juniors or whatever else they end up doing. I don't know. I just feel like there's not as much need to pick the European player as much anymore. I'm not saying you don't pick them for the sake of being European, but I get your point there. I just think there's more stability in the game is much more similar over here.
Right. And you look at a Cooley or a Gauthier and go, okay, they're in college. If they light college on fire, guess what? I could sign them and put them on the team next year.
Yep.
I could put them in the AHL. I've got full control, I just think that that's interesting. But one of the things that I want to pitch to you guys before we go is I had thought about this idea because when we had first said that the Flyers were going to draft 5th overall, I had thrown out the name Matthew Savoy, which if you want this top end talent who's going to, provide you the flashy offense, he's somebody who sticks out. Size, he's small. Right. And I think that that's going to make him slide. But I'm wondering if the Flyers could, if they notice, okay, he is slide. I mean, they'd have to notice pretty quickly. But like, if they were like, we're confident we could get him at 10.
Do you trade back?
Right. Trade back and see if you can get a 2nd round pick back because we don't have one this year. Like if your guy is Matthew Savoy and you go, I'll be able to get him at 10, trade back for that 10th and see if you can get either a 2nd round pick, a 2nd, 3rd round pick, I just think it's an interesting option, especially in a draft where it's like from 3 to 12.
Right.
Who knows?
And I think I was thinking about that too, is that's going to be the intriguing thing because the Flyers aren't going to be pinned into a guaranteed 1 or 2 pick like we have been in the past, or like it seems like they're Montreal and who is it, Seattle this year?
It's Montreal, New Jersey.
Montreal and New Jersey are going to have this year. So I do think like if you have that ability and the talent gap isn't extreme to drop down 5 places and still get one of the top 3 players that you wanted anyway, like I wouldn't see why you wouldn't do it Is there an appetite for it? I don't know.
Right.
I think it's going to depend on who slides to the Flyers. Like if we're talking Logan Cooley at 5,
Sure.
not interested. You know,
Right.
if we're talking, and maybe unpopular, but like if we're talking Yurchek, Nemec, I'm not a big. I kind of don't want him to go D. I want him to go offense, especially center. You know,
Right.
given their lack of depth. So, I mean, if you can, if it's a case where top forwards are taken off the board and you're stuck, I don't want to say stuck, but you're kind of pigeonholed between Nemec, Yurchek, whatever it might be. Maybe back to 8 just to be safe if possible, or like 7. I don't know. Like I don't know what the safe bet is there.
Sure.
But I've never been a big fan of trading back because it's like I'm looking more so in terms of quality as opposed to quantity. Like, sure, we could stock the cupboards to the gills, but what type of quality is in there? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, but obviously, like, if you think about it, right, most of your NHLers come from like the first 2 rounds of the draft.
Mhm.
Right. Somebody will go and tell me that Pavel Datsyuk was drafted in the round 9 and that doesn't even exist anymore. But like most of your NHLers come in those first 2 rounds. So it's like if you're a team that, even though we say aggressive retool, is more on the rebuild side than the go for it side, and it's all about kind of getting as much assets as possible right now, like the idea of sliding back a little bit, getting another, again, second round, early third round pick just to get some, just get some more opportunities to grab another player, it would intrigue me. Unless Logan Cooley's on the board, Derek. If Logan Cooley's on the board, that's a
all bets are
stupid
off.
move.
You're taking him.
Yeah. But I just think it would be an interesting thing to at least consider.
I'm sure. Hoagie, lasting thoughts.
I've got none.
I need a shirt with your face and that saying on it.
I got nothing.
I got
It's
nothing.
it's the draft, man. It's all flashing. All I don't
You gonna
know.
watch it?
I'll definitely watch it. I always try to watch it or at least listen to it if I'm traveling, but it's
Was
just
it
the
Thursday
names,
night?
and I'm just like,
Thursday and
Thursday.
Friday.
Okay.
yeah,
I will have
it's
to
nice.
clear my
I
schedule.
don't have a game on Thursday. I'm excited.
What's it start? 8 o'clock?
Probably.
Probably.
I hope
And,
so.
and luckily the Flyers are picking early, so it's like it'll be 9 o'clock
Right.
and we can be like, all right, we can go to bed now.
Yes.
It's like we're picking 14 and it's like 10:30.
Like, shoot me. Oh, I think I was at the beach last year during the draft. I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I
I remember being
all
in
right.
Pittsburgh when we drafted Patrick. That sucked.
was down at Bethany Beach down in Delaware when that happened. And we had like a small TV. And like my wife's like hanging out with the dog out in the whatever yard it was. And I'm like popping my head in. I'm like, who'd the Flyers take? She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, you wouldn't understand.
Nolan Patrick.
Yep.
All right, Hoagie, please tell me you didn't decide to write your own dad joke
I
again.
didn't this year or this week. Sorry.
This year.
Yeah,
Year.
jeez.
We're only getting a yearly dad joke.
I'm thinking
I'm
back
for
to
that.
the Nolan Patrick year. All right.
And
There's a
Here
new
we go.
fragrance. There's a new fragrance for introverts coming out. It's called Leave Me the Fuck Cologne.
all right.
That wasn't bad.
Hey, Hoagie, I need you to be honest though, buddy. Did you have to Google what an introvert was before you told that joke?
I did not.
Look at him. He's clearly an
Did
introvert.
not.
I think most of us are here at this point.
Except for
There's
John.
a difference between being an introvert and not having any friends.
Is there a difference
I
between
don't
being
have
an
any
introvert and
friends.
just hating people?
Right.
That's it.
That was a
wanna
solid
go
dad
out.
joke.
You just don't have anyone to go out with.
Right.
Why go out when I've got beer in the fridge? Like,
Exactly.
Sadly, though, that's a good night these days. Like sitting out on the patio alone, listening to
Going out
music.
is a chore, man.
Oh,
It's
dude.
like you're
Yeah.
thinking about.
And plus, I mean, John, you got live-in in-laws. And Derek, are your parents close by?
my
Like, do you have
parents are
like,
like 5 minutes down the road. Yeah.
oh, dude, like Lauren's parents are here, but they don't babysit all that much. So it's like all of a sudden, like, you know, a night out that you
step
tack on
up.
another $80 onto that with babysitter money, and so it
Right.
gets tough.
Oh yeah. I always just tell my parents, I'm like, listen, like you owe me for everything you robbed me of when I was a child. You owe me, which was nothing. They were great parents, but it's all in the cell. All right. Well, Matt Casey, would you let the folks know where they're going to be able to find you?
Hey, folks, ladies and gentlemen, it is Matt Casey, and it's Pod Street Casey. I can't remember if street spelled out anymore. I haven't used it all that much.
It is. It's spelled out.
Pod Street Casey spelled out. Casey. Enjoy.
Hoagie.
Pod Street Hogs on that Twitter app.
Oh my god, moron.
John.
You can find this.
Follow.
You can find this podcast on all your various podcast listening receptacles, included but not limited to
Everything.
all of it. Yeah, I blagged completely. Just
You gotta
now.
write these down. We just
I
gotta
just like,
type
what do
this
you
up.
even look on? All those, yeah. Dude,
I'm just gonna put a banner for
Like,
the
does
end of the
somebody
show
really-
with
yeah, we need
every
to
single
stop
freaking thing now.
There you go, Hoagie. That's perfect.
We need to stop calling it
Derek,
out.
can you
Like,
say goodbye? I gotta pee, man.
Just go pee. I gotta run through affiliates too. So you're good.
just go, man.
All right, bye now.
Well,
Oh,
see you, John. No, you can check out our guys over at Flyers High and Wide. They're on Twitter at FlyersHW. You can check out the 5 Minute Major podcast, Dave and Mastro as well. They're on Twitter at 5 Min Major Pod. Otherwise, you can find us here on Twitter at Pod Street Bullies, and you can check us out every week here. We're on StreamYard. We are on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts,
YouTube,
all the
Facebook,
podcasts
Twitter.
John did mention. Anyways, folks, later.
John's back on Twitter.
Oh, he is. Check him out too. Just kidding. Don't screw him.
Terrible follow.
Bye now.